fighter has the highest fight IQ?
I don't think there's nobody in the game that has the fight IQ that I have.
Off the charts.
His fucking IQ.
The highest fight IQ maybe ever.
This guy hits hard. He's tough. He's this, he's that. And this guy has a dream. But my fight IQ will win this fight.
Alone along a lonesome lake, Lucy longed for the love of her life.
11 elderly elves lick licorice lollipops.
All right, we got UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Albazi coming up. We're going to be going through the entire card from top to bottom, going through a couple quicker than others because there are some duds on this card. So we'll try to get through this pretty expeditiously. Let me bring up the card very quickly. And our first fight of the night, Jamie Lynn Horth versus Ivana Petrovic. Now, we'll do this one pretty quickly. I will say they both do have decent records. This fight is pretty much a coin flip. It's not really worth looking in too much, but I will say both of them, 7-1, 6-1. Ivana Petrovic with 3 wins by KO and 3 wins by submission. Jamie Lynn Horth with 3 wins by KO and 2 wins by submission. Both well-rounded fighters. And 6-1 and 7-1 are respectable records. Jamie Lynn Horth, when I was looking into her record, she's got 2 wins over Lupi Godinez. That to me is good.
Yeah, and I think we were looking at both of them, and to be honest, opponent-wise, nobody remarkable. That was kind of the biggest one out of either of them, and I do think that's worth something.
Yeah,
for sure.
I probably, if I gun to my head, if I had to choose, I'm going Jamie Lynn Horth just because she's got 2 wins over Lupi Godinez, who has proved she's a skillful fighter. She can put on good fights in the UFC as well. So, first one, Jamie Lynn Horth.
I'm going Ivana.
Yeah.
Going opposite, just for fun.
Just for fun. On to the next one, Chad Anheliger versus Cody Gibson.
Yeah, it's fine. It's bantamweight fight here. Cody Gibson, I feel like I've seen recently. Chad Anheliger, I don't know that I know too much about. Cody just having a lot more experience. He's obviously got more losses too, unfortunately, but he does have a fair bit of wins. I think I've seen a couple of his fights and thought that he looked good when I did. I tend not to pick with the Canadian boys, so we're going Cody.
All right. Yeah, I'll go Cody as well, just because I think skill-wise they're pretty similar, but Cody's got the physical advantage with the reach and the height.
Yeah.
Chad Anheliger coming in off the Contender Series, he's scrappy, but I wouldn't say he's like super good at any one thing. On to the next fight.
Yeah, you were talking a little bit about this one before we started, so I'm curious to hear.
Series City versus Garrett Armfield. This is like actually funny because this is kind of like an upgraded version. This is like the evolved Pokemon version of the last fight. This is like
fair enough.
Garrett Armfield is kind of like an evolved version of Chad Anheliger, and Series City is like an evolved version of Cody Gibson.
Nice.
Series City is good. He's got crisp striking. He's haven't seen a crazy amount of jiu-jitsu from him. That being said, I haven't watched a ton of his fights, but I saw him for the first time on the Contender Series when he fought Ramon Taveras, which, I think that was kind of a controversial decision. If I'm remembering correctly, City got the stoppage, but everyone thought it was an early stoppage. If I'm remembering correctly, that's kind of how it went. So Dana was essentially like, okay, well, I was impressed with both of you guys, so you guys are going to rematch in the UFC as both of your debuts. And then Taveras got the win there. He's going up against Garrett Armfield, who is a good boxer and has decent power in his hands, and also is scrappy and scrambly and all that. I think Series City's a little bit cleaner, though, with his strikes.
Okay.
So for me, I'm probably going to go with Series City.
Yeah, I was kind of agreeing with you originally. This is a bantamweight. There's a pretty big height differential. Sydney's got almost 5 inches in height and 2 inches in reach across both arms and legs. That being said, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. If we saw anything last week, the shorter guy can potentially get on the inside and put a lot of power down.
Right.
just for fun, I'm going to go Garrett Armfield on this one just to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad pick. He does have a win over Katona.
Yep.
I mean, if you've watched our videos in the past, we don't really rate Brad Katona super highly. But Armfield, besides that, does have KOs in the UFC.
Yeah.
Submission loss to David Onama on his short notice debut up at featherweight, not terrible. So his losses aren't too bad, and his wins are pretty good. Man, I know I said I'm going with Siri City, but seeing how Siri City handled the rematch with Ramon Taveras, the shorter fighter, with scrappy boxing, I'm going to change my pick. I'm going Garrett Armfield. He's got good boxing, good power in his hands. Brad Katona, I think, would have a better fight with Siri City. I mean, MMA math, whatever, but I'm gonna switch my pick to Garrett Armfield.
Ooh, dang. First switch of the card. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We can convince it.
Yeah.
Next one here, heavyweight bout. This was part of, I guess, what seems to be an attempt to get another heavyweight fight, right? Because I believe Romanov was supposed to originally fight Derek Lewis, which was supposed to be the co-main for this card. Derek Lewis is still on the main card, but got bumped down, and then Alexander Romanov is now fighting on the prelims against Rodrigo Nascimento. Kind of a weird situation here. I'm not sure exactly what the point was outside of maybe trying to get another heavyweight bout. Maybe they felt that it was too mismatched after looking into both of them. Both have struggled in their careers in the UFC. I believe they're both 0-2. Really kind of tough records. Not a whole lot of promise. It felt weird that Alexander Romanov would be fighting Derek Lewis, even though Derek Lewis has kind of had an up and down career here. I guess if I had to pick, I'm going to go Rodrigo Nascimento. I think Alexander Romanov is going to gas super early, and it's probably just going to be whoever can land a heavier shot and not be exhausted.
Yeah, I do think that's the smart pick. Nascimento does have impressive wins in the UFC, to me at least. Tanner Boser is a hard dude to get a decision win off of. If we go forward in his career a little bit, beating Dontel Mays, Dontel Mays is not really ranked that highly, but he got it done over a guy he was supposed to. Decision over Alir Latifi is good as well. Alir Latifi had a fight against Derek Lewis a few years back that they gave it to Lewis, but I thought Alir won that fight, honestly.
Yeah.
Judges are super biased against Lewis, so Nascimento would be the smart pick. He seems to be a fighter who has decent fight IQ, not like a ton of like finishing potential in the UFC shown, but he's a smart fighter and well-rounded. I do agree with you that Romanov really only has round one, and Nascimento proved that he's a good enough fighter to be able to survive a tough round one. I'm gonna go with Nascimento as well.
Nice.
Up the card. This honestly might be one of the best fights on the card. Jack Shore versus Yusuf Zalal. Now, Jack Shore lost his last fight to Joe Anderson Brito, but it was a weird fight. I mean, he was losing the fight, but in round 2, I believe, Joe Anderson Brito landed a really, really nice leg kick that I think Jack Shore checked, but it opened up a nasty cut on Jack Shore's leg. And I think they were in Brazil, and they saw that cut, and they were like, fuck it, let's give the fight to Joe Anderson. I think Joe Anderson would have beat him anyway. I glazed Joe Anderson Brito pretty hard.
Yep.
But Jack Shore is a good fighter, and I don't think that fight should have been stopped. Yusuf Zalal, on the other hand, was win and loss at the beginning of his career, got let go by the UFC, and I think he went on a 4-fight knockout streak or something like that outside of the UFC. Either way, he went on a really impressive win streak after he got let go by the UFC. Now that he's come back into the UFC, he's gotten 2 impressive wins. A submission in round 1 over Jarno Aarons, who is good. not great, but he is good.
Yeah.
And a round 2 submission over Billy Quarantillo. That's a good win.
Mm-hmm.
I like the trajectory that Yusuf Zalal is on. He clearly got better after he got let go by the UFC. This is a tough fight with Jack Shore, but Jack Shore's striking just has never looked good enough for me to like be confident in a pick with him when he's in a matchup against a well-rounded, aggressive guy like Yusuf Zalal. So for those reasons, I'm going Zalal in this matchup.
Nice. I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think I was also going Zalal. I was looking at kind of his previous record, his first attempt, kind of just to do well in the UFC, and he had a good period of time where he had some wins. Ended up fighting the now featherweight champ Ilia Topuria back in 2020 and took him all the way to a 3-round decision. Ultimately lost the fight, but the fact that he was able to weather even an early Topuria is not a bad sign. Had a couple unfortunate losses against Choi and Woodson, but did come back, had those 2 submission wins. Looks like he's in a much better place in his career.
Yeah.
Looks like he's developed some skills that I think are probably going to be a lot more useful nowadays than maybe they were in his first attempt. So I think I'm going Yusuf on this one as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yusuf has had stronger opponents, and that's not to say that Jack Shore hasn't, but
No.
with him recently coming up to featherweight, it's really hard to compare past opponents. Jack Shore does have good wins that impress me. A submission over Makwan Amirkhani is good. A win over Timur Valiev is good. But it's really hard to compare these fights when, I mean, you're talking about Yusuf Zalal taking Ilia to a decision. I rank that higher than any win that Jack Shore could have got at bantamweight. So, yeah, good pick for Zalal. Nice.
Little bantamweight bout after that. We have Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. I think this will be a fun one here. Charles Jourdain's last time out, he fought John Silva. Unfortunately, had a pretty tough loss against John Silva. Not saying that when you're going past fights.
Sorry to interrupt, but when you're when you're going up against our fight nerds here,
you know what's going to happen.
Our favorite team, that's
absolutely. Not saying that a previous fight can necessarily dictate your next fight, right? That's always kind of the beauty of this sport, is there's always an opportunity to turn it around. That being said, I like the way Victor Henry has looked recently. He's had some good fights as well. Just because I said it earlier, I'm still not going with my Canada boys, so I'm taking Victor Henry.
Yeah, honestly, bro, Canadian men make it so hard to bet on them.
Absolutely.
It's just fucking crazy. But yeah, fact of the matter is, look, we don't know how Charles Jourdain is going to look at bantamweight yet. He was always kind of on the smaller side for featherweight. But I don't know. We've seen very few guys come down to bantamweight and do well. But Victor Henry's a tough matchup for him. Taking Javid Basharat to a draw, even though the fight didn't last the whole fight, it was kind of one of those where the fight ended at the end of round 2 and they called it a no contests. But Victor Henry, win over Tony Gravely is good. Tony Gravely's a good fighter, although we haven't seen him in a while. I don't know what the hell happened to him. A KO over Ronnie Yaya, I mean, sure. But Victor Henry is good. This to me is a coin flip. This is really tough, but I'm gonna go with Charles Jourdain, just on a whim. Okay. Just on a whim that he's really talented, and maybe bantamweight is the division for him, and we just don't know it yet.
Fair.
So I'm kind of going on a whim and picking Charles.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah.
I'll let you introduce this one because I can't pronounce it.
Okay, let's see. What's our next?
This is the women's flyweight bout.
Wow, I lost where we're at on the card. Hold on.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Jasmine Jasdavicius versus Ariane Lipski, or her last name might be different now because she got married.
Da Silva. Yeah.
Silva. Yeah, Ariane Lipski. That's how I know her, so that's what I'm gonna call her. Man, honestly, another coin flip. Ariane Lipski has more finishing potential. She kind of goes for the finish a bit more. She's a little more aggressive. Jasmine is a good fighter, Jasmine Jasudavicius. But she's, most of her wins are decisions, but she does have a win over a fighter that I like to glaze, Palastri. That's how Jasmine Jasudavicius got into the UFC. She beat Palastri in the Contender Series, although I thought Palastri should have won the fight. I mean, she lost, but it was one where Palastri was really starting to come on in the third round and really starting to put work on her. Man, this is a tough one. I tend to go towards Ariane just because she looks for the finish more. Those are always like when it comes to women's fights, that's really kind of how I judge it. Who goes for the finish more? And do they actually get finishes? Ariane Lipski is pretty well-rounded. She's sloppy but aggressive on the feet, but her jiu-jitsu's good. Jasmine is more tight on the feet, but kind of not great at any one thing. She's well-rounded, but it's just a tough one to pick. But I'm going to go with Ariane just because she tends to go for the finish more, so I like that.
Yeah. I was going to agree with you originally. Lipski was definitely where I was leaning as far as my pick. That being said, I don't mind a jack-of-all-trades fighter every now and then.
Yeah.
I think that can be a beneficial thing. Women's flyweight is one of those divisions where the opportunity to go to a decision is pretty high. Like, more often than not, we see these fights make it to a decision. I think Jasmine has the ability to get to a decision, obviously, and has this situation where she's not necessarily, I think, going to get outclassed anywhere, but isn't necessarily going to be outclassing anybody either.
So you think she's going to do enough just to squeak out a decision?
I do. I think it's going to go to decision. I think it's probably going to be a 29-28 kind of situation, and I think Jasmine's going to eke it out.
I could see it.
Yeah.
I could definitely see it.
Yep.
Featured prelim.
This one's fun. We were talking about this one quite a bit before we got on here, and got some things to say.
Say 'em.
So I personally am going for Zahabi on this one. It's my one Canadian guy that I am going to be willing to pick, mostly because I struggle to see the potential that Pedro Munoz has at this point. He's had a lot of high-level competition, unfortunately falls short pretty consistently when he gets to that point. I think Pedro Munoz has those kind of flash-in-the-pan moments. Obviously, the knockout over Cody Garbrandt's a good one, but everybody was knocking out Cody Garbrandt at that point. I like Zahabi mostly because I like the TriStar team. I like Faraz. I think their style is good, and I've seen Zahabi fight. I really liked his last fight. I thought he did great. Coming off of a win, Munoz is kind of trying to recover and now is kind of given the opportunity to rise or fall again here, I think, and I think Zahabi's ready to rise to the occasion. Yeah.
Man, to me, I feel when I'm trying to pick a winner for this fight,
it's tough.
I feel very similar to how I felt leading up to the Kyler Phillips Rob Font matchup, where I'm like, I know that Kyler Phillips, like, he's on the come up, so he would be the smart pick. Amin Zahabi, although he's been in the UFC for a long time, he doesn't really fight. He's not super active.
No, he's not. It seems like pretty much once a year.
Yeah, but I'm comparing him in this situation to like a Kyler Phillips. He's a well-rounded, he's a well-rounded, talented fighter who has good wins. And it's like I don't even remember the last time I saw Amin Zahabi lose. I mean, when was the last time he lost?
Would have been a little while ago. It looks like Ramos, probably back in 2017.
Yeah, man, he hasn't lost in a long time. He's very good. Like I said, he seems to be the smart pick for this.
Yeah. And
but I also
if we want to go off of the theory that the Basharats are plants used to catapult people,
I know.
Zahabi's last win was a Basharat.
I know. I was kind of upset there because I did, like at that time, I wanted the Basharat brothers to just continue going undefeated.
But now we know.
Oh, man.
Cat's out of the bag.
A
We're waiting
win
to
over-
build one of them up.
A win over Javid Basharat is really good, but the Basharats haven't gotten far enough to see, like, I think Pedro Munoz is a much better fighter. Pedro Munoz has great takedown defense, and we've seen, like, over the last couple of years, other than the Kyler Phillips fight, like, it takes a very high-level fighter to beat Pedro Munoz.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ayman Zahabi is that high level. A win over Javid Basharat is good, but, man, I
It's
don't know.
tough.
He's 36 years old. He ain't no spring chicken either,
No,
This is
true.
These are two guys out of their prime. Like,
Yeah.
Ayman Zahabi, we haven't seen him lose in a long ass time, but he's also only fought once a year for the past like 5 years.
Yeah.
Even more. I'm going Pedro Munoz. He's had a more active schedule over the last few years. Whatever, he lost to Kyler Phillips, but other than that, it does take a very high level guy to beat him. He's got great takedown defense, good striking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going
Fair
Pedro.
enough.
I'm going Pedro Munoz.
I'm
the old
I'm gonna
Punisher.
take it
dude.
one step. I'm going one step further. I'm gonna call my shot on this one too.
Let's see.
So I like patterns, and I'm looking at his last 5 fights, basically, or this will be the 5th one. And he's alternated between first-round knockouts and third-round decisions every other fight.
That's the only decision you can have,
Yep.
unless it's a
Third
final
round.
fight. Dude, he
Either
decisioned
way.
him in round 3. That was sick.
Oh, my God. But either way, the last one was a 3-round unanimous
Yeah.
decision. So this next one has to be a first-round knockout if we're basing it off of the pattern that he's been able to maintain since 2021. First-round knockout, Zahabi.
I'd rather see it than a Pedro Munoz decision, to be honest.
Fair enough.
But I'm still going Pedro.
Hey, that's good.
All right, on to the main
Yeah.
card.
Yes. Mike Malott, Trevin Giles. This is a pretty fun one. Both of them are coming off of a loss. Was looking into it. I think my instinct was to go with Mike Malott here. I feel like the last time that I saw Trevin Giles out, he just didn't look as good as he has in the past.
He always gets finished in devastating fashion.
It's
Like
pretty tough.
when he loses,
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going against the grain here on this one, going with another Canadian guy. But Mike Malott has had some good performances in the UFC. His last loss was to Neil Magny, which is not anything to be ashamed of. Neil Magny's pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of people shit talk Neil Magny but here's the thing. I think if you lose a decision to Neil Magny, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I think if you get finished by Neil Magny, I think you should be ashamed.
Yeah. Well, he did get finished in the 3rd round with 15 seconds left.
Yeah, either way.
It's pretty tough. But that's Malott's last loss. He's had some pretty good submissions. Prior to that, I think his track record is pretty consistently good.
Yeah.
I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you here. I think Mike
Nice.
Malott will get it done. I am impressed by Mike Malott, although he did just get finished by Neil Magny. I think he is a good fighter. But, I don't really think, how far is he really going to get? Can he beat a Trevin Giles? Probably.
Yeah.
Past that, I really don't know. So while
It starts to get questionable.
Yeah, while I do think he probably could take down Trevin in this fight and control him down there and do enough on the feet, it is what it is. Well, he could get the win, but what is he really going to do past there? And he's young, he's young in his career. He could improve. He could do all that good stuff. But again, Canadian men, you just can't. It's tough to really say how much they're going to do. Speaking of, next fight coming up, Marc-Andre Barrios versus Dustin Stoltzfus.
Stoltzfus. Both coming off of losses again. I think my pick for this one was against Peralta on this one. Dustin Solfitz has been finished twice fairly recently against two people we've actually just seen, Bruno Ferreira and Abus Magomedov. But, you know, for me, this is a coin flip. I can't say that I really am like a fan of either of these guys. Can't say that I've ever been super excited to see him fight.
Well, you're not excited about the power bar, dude?
No, I'm all right.
No,
I'm all right, man.
I'm
This is a coffee break one for me. I'll probably skip this fight on the card, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, you know, Dustin Stoltzfus has decent striking. Marc-Andre Barriault is like kind of the king of decisions at middleweight. You know, Dustin Stoltzfus just lost to Bruno Ferreira is his name, right? Mm-hmm. Who we kind of found out if he doesn't knock you out, he's a fraud. He's pretty much screwed. Marc-Andre Barriault is decent over 3 rounds. He can get it done. I'm gonna trust in Marc-Andre Barriault just because he's like a little more reliable.
There you go. I'm going based on the fact that he's got tattoos and the other dude doesn't. That's just that edge you need sometimes. You got to look cool.
Yeah. Okay, moving up, Kyle Machado versus Brenson Ribeiro. Now here's my idea. Here's my idea.
Yeah,
ready?
I've got a couple ideas too.
Ready?
I hate this fight.
Loser leaves the UFC. Winner
100%.
also leaves the UFC.
Please. I don't understand why this is on the main card. It doesn't make any sense to me. They're both 0-2. They both look like they don't really belong in the position that they're in. Machado really, I think, should be fighting at 185. He's going to have really terrible cardio. Homeboy could go on a diet, would probably benefit from being a little bit lighter, and maybe that would change his game. But at light heavyweight, he's not had success.
Yeah, and his frame would still look like a Fluffy Hernandez at middleweight. Like he would still have chub on him even at middleweight. It's not like fucking Cannonier where he comes down and he's like jacked now all of a sudden because he like, you know.
He's not going to be a Khalil, huh?
No. Yeah. So what? Coin flip or what?
Who cares?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I don't understand why it's on the main card. I don't understand. I mean, there's not even a Canadian in it, so I don't get that it's like an Edmonton. Oh, Canadian fighters. They're both Brazilian.
Yeah. Brenson Ribeiro.
This is a terrible fight. I don't get it.
Yeah, but I will say I'm going to go with Brenson Ribeiro. I think he looks a little bit cleaner on the feet. The loss to Magomed Ghaziasulov is not terrible. In the Zhang Mingyang fight, he, although he did get knocked out in 2 minutes, he was winning that fight and getting the better of the exchanges up until he got knocked out. I don't know if he was just kind of felt like he couldn't be touched because he was ahead, but he was landing good shots and some combinations against Ming Yang before getting knocked out.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's like we said in the beginning, cut both of these guys no matter what happens. But that being said, Ribeiro I'll probably pick to win. He's a little faster. He's got a long reach.
Yep. So. I think he's going to be genuinely more athletic, and if this goes into the second or third round, then it's going to be pretty clear.
Yeah. Oh man, up the card, our beloved Derek Lewis.
One of the best against Hinata Denise, 8-0, I believe, kickboxer coming into the UFC fairly recently. He's been in for a little bit, I think, but not too long.
I think he's 2-0 or 3-0 in the UFC, something like that.
I think so as well. So, fun fight. Derek Lewis is one of those guys that's either going to knock somebody out or probably get knocked out. He doesn't really seem to lose decisions unless you're Francis.
Yeah.
And he didn't lose that one. Instinctually, I'm going to go Derek Lewis because I feel like I always go Derek Lewis. The opportunity for a crazy knockout is always there for him. He's looked better in some cases. There was a period of time where Derek Lewis started losing some weight, started really taking his strength and conditioning seriously, and we saw an improved Derek Lewis that doesn't gas out, so I'm hoping that's what we'll get again. But either way, I think if he can touch him, he can finish him, so that's always going to be the key.
Yeah, Derek is also like a fighter, unless he's going up against a strong grappler, even if he gasses, like we saw against Volkov, knocked
Yeah.
him out in the last 10 seconds. Like, even if he's gassed, if it's in the striking realm, like
Yes.
he still will put you out, even if he's
100%.
completely exhausted. Janatza Janice, no grappling background, none.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Derek Lewis, man, it does take a good grappler to take him down and hold him down.
Yeah.
I don't see Janice being able to take down Derek or hold him down for any
No.
significant period of time because he's coming from Glory. He's a Glory kickboxer, from the beginning, and he went 3-4 in Glory. Like, he wasn't even that great of a kickboxer in the sport of kickboxing.
Yeah.
He's had good performances in the UFC so far, but not against anyone good. I think his debut was against Austin Lane, right? And then he beat Carl Williams after that.
Yeah, that's been his two so far.
I think Carl Williams has since been let go from the UFC. Austin Lane just got a win, but should be let go from the UFC regardless because the guy he beat just got let go from the UFC. So,
Right.
Janatza Janice is also something to consider. Is he's a small heavyweight. He's really not very big. I'm going with Derek. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think so.
I'm not just going with him because I love him and I want him to win because you know what I mean. Like,
Absolutely.
Derek Lewis is very likable and very easy to want to pick, but I genuinely think he doesn't have many disadvantages in this fight.
No.
I think
I
the
don't
UFC
think so either.
knows. Yeah, I think the UFC knows what they're doing with this matchup. So,
Yes.
yeah, going with Derek.
Yeah, I think that's a safe pick.
Yeah.
Derek Lewis, if he does have to, can just implement his just stand-up jiu-jitsu, and it won't be a problem.
Yeah, but I don't even think he's going to get taken down.
I don't think it's going to make it that long.
Yeah.
Main. This is a fun one. Aaron Blanchfield versus Rose Namajunas.
Yeah, we can chat. We can chat about this one for a little bit.
We can chat about this one because I think we have differing opinions here on who gets it done.
I think we do. What do you think?
So I went back and recently rewatched the Aaron Blanchfield Jessica Andrade fight. Aaron Blanchfield looked very good against Jessica Andrade. Obviously got the second round submission. The finishing sequence was wild to me. The takedown was very clean. It was a little inside trip off of a single leg. And Andrade posed no grappling threat whatsoever. She immediately steps out of half guard into side control with no effort. Andrade rolls over, gives her the back. She sinks in the choke. It happens fairly resistantless. I think Aaron Blanchfield's goal here is not to kickbox with Rose. While she can, and I think she has the chin to be able to handle it, I saw her take plenty of right hands from Andrade and be able to walk through them. I don't know that that's the game you want to play with Namajunas, who clearly has a striking advantage, I think, against most of the girls in the flyweight division. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think if Rose gets taken down against somebody that clearly has a game plan of doing so, that she's not going to be able to deal with that. So I think Aaron's game plan is going to be maybe strike with her to feel it out and then start trying to set up takedowns and get something on the ground.
So you're going with Aaron here?
I'm going with Aaron Blanchfield.
Okay.
Because she submitted fairly high-level grapplers so far in her career as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still kind of going back and forth on this one in my head.
Yeah.
I do know who I'm going with. I'm going with Rose.
Okay.
Sorry, my fellow New Jersey native, Aaron Blanchfield. She's a good wrestler. If you're from New Jersey, you have great wrestling by default. Mm-hmm. However, one thing, Rose is not very easy to take down. And you have to, the thing is, first you have to get past her at kicking and striking range, which is not easy. Her footwork is very good. She's very hard to find. We saw in the fight with Aaron against Manon Fiorot that when Aaron is facing someone who is really good at managing distance on the feet, she has a very tough time finding you. And even when she finds you against the fence, and here's the thing, the big difference between Fiorot and Rose is that Fiorot has like a ton of natural strength. She's very,
Yeah.
very strong for the division. So it was tough for Erin to take her down. Erin got her down a couple times, but it was only technically takedowns, really not much top control. But once you get past Rose's kicks and her strikes at distance, you have to get into the clinch with her. And she's very, very good in the clinch. She has great knees.
Yeah.
She's very good at posting off with her elbows and landing really good knees in the clinch. I think it's going to get it's going to be hard for Erin to get past the distance. And then once she does close the distance, the clinch is very dangerous for her. She will
I think Blanchfield is going to be willing to clinch with her, though. She was willing to clinch with Andrade and was throwing elbows from the clinch pretty consistently, especially on the separations.
Yeah.
So I don't know that Blanchfield is going to feel shy about trying to clinch with Rose, especially if she thinks that she can turn it into a takedown.
No, I don't think she's going to be shy. Listen, Erin Blanchfield, even if she knows, clearly, even if she knows that she's losing the fight or she's outgunned or whatever it is, she's very tough and very scrappy. She's going to try to come after you no matter what. But I just don't think that's going to be smart with her against Rose. Rose is a sharpshooter. She's going to find shots. She's going to defend most of the takedowns, I think.
Yeah.
And Rose Namajunas is a very dangerous jiu-jitsu player. You know what I mean? That's kind of her background. She became a good striker, but her jiu-jitsu is where she, in the beginning of her career, she was getting a lot of stuff done. She was known for her jiu-jitsu in the very beginning, developed the striking later, which, her strike, you would never know. You would think she had some sort of striking background.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say that I do think Rose is going to get it done. I think it's going to be hard for Erin to find her enough to get enough top control, to land enough strikes, to look for the submission. I just don't think she's going to have enough time on top to be able to find it.
Fair enough. Well, that'll be a fun one. I think that's going to be one of the more exciting fights of the card, to be honest.
Yeah, it could be.
I think for the most part, outside of, a handful of fights, Rose is always exciting to watch.
Yeah, and listen, we all MMA math doesn't work. We know that.
Yeah.
But Rose and Manon Fiorot do have similar styles, but Rose has the jiu-jitsu advantage over Manon, and Manon has the strength advantage. So they kind of have these slight differences in their game. But I think it's a similar matchup for Erin. And Rose did really, really well in that fight against Fiorot and dislocated her finger in the first round and still made it a really, really competitive fight. That is really impressive. And while I don't think Rose is in her prime anymore, with women it's a little bit different. They tend to still be able to have good performances even when they're older. Whether that's something to be said about the competition in the women's divisions or what, it doesn't matter. I still think Rose is capable of putting on good performances. Absolutely.
No, I think that Rose is still potentially even found a second wind after moving up to flyweight.
Maybe.
I'm hopeful. I loved Rose when she was champ at 115. She was definitely one of the more exciting women's champs that we've had. And, if she can make it into this flyweight, maybe she fights Shevchenko or Grasso or some of those if she ends up kind of getting into that group. But that's probably the most exciting women's division right now.
It is, and it's slowly overtaking the strawweight division. For most of women's MMA history, strawweight was the division.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I think flyweight is slowly kind of creeping their way into the conversation. Man, I feel like I just had something to say about that, but I forgot. It doesn't matter.
Oh no.
If it comes up, I'll remember. On to the main event, though.
Yes, super fun fight. Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. Initial thoughts. I'm always a Brandon Moreno fan. He's won me over since the Figgy fights for sure.
Yeah.
He's had a really cool story, leaving the UFC, finding success outside of the UFC, and then making a return to getting to be the champion of that division. Lot of experience, a lot of fights, a lot of wars, a lot of really tough fights. I personally felt like he beat Brandon Royval, but I know people will disagree with me on that one.
I do.
Beyond that, a consistently high-level competition, and I don't think Amir Albazi is any exception to that rule. 17-1, coming off of a win, had a lot of success so far. Amir Albazi is definitely on his title run, for sure.
Yeah, it kind of does suck that he had to have like a major surgery after his last fight. I think it was like neck surgery or either neck or back surgery. Look that up to correct me. But I do know that after his fight against Kai, he had to have some major surgery. So that's why he's been out for so long. But Amir Albazi, listen, he's a good fighter. He's high level. He deserves to be at the top of the division. So don't get me wrong when I say this, but I don't rate his wins as highly as Brandon Moreno. And maybe that's just a case of he just hasn't gotten those matchups yet. I thought he lost the fight to Kai.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that one.
And that being said, going to a close decision with Kai is a good thing. Like it's impressive. It's impressive because Kai does finish guys. We're at flyweight, but not getting finished by Kai and taking him to a close decision is a good thing. It's a good look for you, especially with Kai's recent performances.
Yeah,
I do tend to lean slightly towards Brandon Moreno. He's much more well-rounded. We've seen how scrambly he is.
Yes,
he is very hard to grapple. Amir Albazi is going to try to grapple him. If he tries to keep it standing with Brandon, it's not going to be a good night for him.
No.
He's going to need to grapple, and Brandon is one of the best grapplers in the division.
100%.
Scrambly as a motherfucker. Good jiu-jitsu. Good. There are some guys who aren't lifelong wrestlers that when I watch them, I'm like, damn, that guy has great wrestling instinct. Like, even though he didn't train it growing up, I'm like, his hips and the way he positions himself look like someone who's been training wrestling for a long time. Brandon Moreno is one of those guys where he has very, very good instincts in terms of positioning when he's on the ground. He knows how to avoid submissions, so I don't see Amir catching him in a submission.
No.
We may not be seeing Brandon in his prime anymore. But it's a similar thing that I was saying about Rose, where at these, sometimes at the lighter weight classes, if a guy is evasive enough, he can put on really good performances.
Yeah. And I mean, Brandon Moreno is one of those guys who, when we talk about dealing with opponents that have advantages, I would say that all of his fights against Figgy, he was at a strength disadvantage. Figgy is a very big flyweight, was a very big flyweight.
Yeah.
Was very strong for the division. I think is even still strong for bantamweight, to be honest.
I agree.
So the fact that Brandon Moreno was able to manage those scrambles in the way that he did, manage the takedowns, because Figgy was relentless with his grappling. Figgy was incredible at grappling, along with the striking battles that they were getting into. I don't know that Amir Albazi can present anything to Brandon Moreno that he hasn't seen.
No, it's just a slight difference. It's like not like Brandon Moreno hasn't seen grappling before, but when we're talking about lifelong wrestlers and the advantage that gives you, Amir is a lifelong wrestler. It does make it tough, but I do see Brandon being able to avoid getting held down.
Yeah. So I did find some info. It was an artificial disc replacement in his neck.
Yeah.
He also apparently had heart surgery.
That was
this year.
I don't like it.
He pulled out of his fight. There was talk of him potentially fighting Tatsuo Taira.
Yeah.
Prior to that, but he had heart surgery. He had his artificial disc replacement. So he's had some adversity, certainly, with his health in recent months. And this was all this year, so it wasn't like it was a very long time frame.
And if you look historically, guys coming back from major surgeries, it's
tough.
It's hard.
It's a tough thing to fight back from.
It really is. Yeah, I do feel bad for Amir because he deserves high-level fights. He's been out for a little while, and I feel bad for him. He's a good fighter. I think people were trashing him a little bit after the Kai fight because a lot of people thought he lost, but this is a good matchup for him, not stylistically to win. I just think like he deserves a big name like Brandon.
I think so. I think it's a great fight. You know, I think it's appropriate as far as the competition level for one another. It's just that's a tough one to get thrown coming off of surgery.
It is. Brandon's always a tough fight for no matter who you are. But yeah, I am gonna lean towards Brandon here.
I am as well. I think the striking's going to be a little too slick. If it doesn't manage to end up on the ground, you know, I think Brandon's going to have enough to be able to weather any wrestling storm that may come his way.
Yeah. And usually I don't put like a ton of weight into activity. But when it's a relatively close matchup like this, I give the edge to Brandon because he's been more active.
Yep.
Overall, decent card. There's a couple duds, like we said, but there are a couple really exciting ones on here that should be fun to watch and actually have some good implications for the division.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's that. UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Albazi. Looking forward to watching it and looking forward to coming back and seeing what's up once the card is over and see how everything plays out. Adios.